Hello my dear friends, and welcome back to another video. I'm super excited for this one because Star Wars just changed our perception of Rogue One forever in the latest Vader comic, issue number 42. It turns out not every partisan died on Jedha when the Empire tested the Death Star. There were survivors, and more aggressive and violent partisans formed after the event. It was once believed that partisans disbanded entirely after 0BBY, but now that's changed. Star Wars have shown us there were more partisans during the original trilogy, born out of the legacy of Saw Gerrera. So before we dive into the comic itself, I think it's really important I give you context as to what we're talking about, so I'm going to fill you in. The issue takes place between the events of The Empire Strikes Back and Return of the Jedi, so between episodes 5 and 6, which is a time period that Star Wars is truly exploring in depth, not just with these comics, but later this year the video game Star Wars Outlaws. But let's just go back a little bit in the timeline to the aftermath of the events of Rogue One, of Jedha, just before A New Hope. Saw Gerrera 100% died in the explosion on Jedha, as did the majority of his partisans. One survivor we did know about before is Benthic, who continued Saw's extremist legacy to thwart the Empire at any cost, even if it meant the death of innocent civilians. Benthic's partisans were able to survive, and they stayed on Jedha. But an offshoot of Saw Gerrera's surviving partisans known as the Dreamers were infiltrated, as we see in Battlefront 2, by Inferno Squad. Now unlike Mon Mothma, Leia Organa, Luke Skywalker and Han Solo recognized that in spite of partisan tendencies to be very extremist, they did perceive some of their actions as mighty and even heroic. Two partisans specifically, Ubin Des and Sholko Ji, wanted to stop the Empire from extracting more kyber crystals from what remained of Jedha. They took the Millennium Falcon back to Jedha, and they were brought before Benthic, who believed they should kill the rebels. Just like Saw Gerrera, he had no love for the Alliance, but he agreed to listen to them. And here is where things get interesting. Benthic had a change of heart, hearing out the rebels. The Alliance agreed to work as allies with the partisan groups. Although Benthic and his group would remain on Jedha, the others were given medals of bravery, disbanded, and merged with the wider Rebel Alliance. And this is very important, because by the time of The Empire Strikes Back, we now know partisans still existed, ones who remained in their groups, born out of Saw Gerrera's ideology, but nonetheless realised the benefit of banding with the Rebel Alliance as a united group, all the while keeping their partisan identity. And so with all of that out the way, let's begin. We start on Coruscant on the Imperial Palace. This comic issue is a fan service dream. Mas Amida, the Grand Vizier, as he is also known as in Star Wars Andor, is about to address the Emperor himself. He approaches the door, where there are Imperial Royal Guards, but he is stopped by a daunting and familiar voice. Sly Moore, the Sub-Administrator, also acknowledged in Andor Season 1, an Umbaran Force-sensitive confidant, part of the Emperor's inner circle, one of the few people in the know about Palpatine's desire to expand the Sith agenda. She is surprised to see Mas Amida there. "Grand Vizier," she says. "Ah, Sub-Administrator Moore." And she replies, "You look pale. Are you unwell? Don't be ridiculous. Oh, my apologies." They approach Palpatine. "Your Eminence," Sly Moore bows down. "I beg your pardon for the interruption, but I believe Mas Amida has some kind of report for you." "Ah yes." Darth Sidious's menace fills the room. I sensed his fear from a kilometre away. Palpatine turns around. "What new failure have you to report, Grand Vizier?" It's also pretty significant to understand that Palpatine reviles Mas Amida. Once an honourable Coruscant politician, was now seen as a nuisance, power-hungry subordinate, and Palpatine was about to run out of patience. Amida replies, I can tell you the droid threat has been destroyed. If you guys remember in the last few issues, they've been dealing with the Scourge, a powerful AI droid presence that has been taking over the minds of droids, but also sentience with mechanical adjustments. Mas Amida gives an update, since Vader has been affected by the Scourge, and as you're going to see, Amida's incompetence is going to render him demoted. He says this: "We have reports that Lord Vader was temporarily able to infect and control droids on his own. We believe he's lost those abilities, but he seeks more power every day. The Emperor, absolutely outraged, blasts an enormous beam of Force lightning towards the Grand Vizier. Lord Vader, who was so weak when I sent you after him, grows even stronger. Yes, Your Eminence. So, to put it simply, Sly Maul thinks she can do a better job than Masamida, and so she is promoted by Palpatine to simply Administrator Maul. In the next section of the comic, we have our first look at a young General Pryde, his comic debut. He appeared in The Rise of Skywalker further down the timeline. He is a Palpatine loyalist. After bragging about a successful arrest of insurgents, they are quickly attacked by partisans, the ones I mentioned at the start of this video. They are extremely reminiscent of Saw Gerrera's partisans, even visually. They have a Jigorian, which I don't think is more off, but it might be. And the reason I think so is that they all have mechanical adjustments, which suggests once upon a time they were probably very injured, maybe lost limbs, but the mechanical adjustments make them susceptible to be possessed by the Scourge. They call themselves the Machine-Augmented Rebel Group, and their female leader, Sonifa, reminds me a lot of Saw Gerrera, Saw Gerrera's deceased sister. Lord Vader, possessed by the Scourge, implants processors into their mechanical augmentations, which means they turn on their rebel friends. Sonifa is able to temporarily resist it, but the group is captured by the Empire, and they all end up in his service, and he takes them to Mustafar. Always great to see Mustafar in the comics. And the Scourge continues to infiltrate their brains, torturing them and trying to access their memory banks. But there is a big problem. One of Vader's droids says, "Are you alright, Lord Vader?" And Vader replies, "I can feel them fighting it." He looks at their brains. "Ah yes, ideally we just eliminate their organic brains, but their value as soldiers depends on the skills and the training embedded in their nervous systems. However, with their full armor in place, the implanted droid brains should not lose control again. And while these partisans are tied up, Administrator Maul enters. Lord Vader humiliated the Grand Vizier. Now it is my time to shine. She says to Vader, "The Emperor sent me to assist you. We were told you were building your strength, but you seem troubled. Are you not happy with your progress?" Vader replies, "This game will not go well for you, Administrator." "Oh, I'm too small for games, Lord Vader. The only way through all of this for me is the truth. You must destroy your master, or be destroyed. That is the way of the Sith. But as powerful as you are not ready. We can make you ready." And by we, she's talking about the schism. Imperials who had enough of the Emperor's reign. She promises Lord Vader all of the power in the galaxy, turning on Darth Sidious. And remember, this is before the events of Return of the Jedi. It seems like she's trying to use the destructive tendencies of the Scourge. It's not just about the Sith. And that is where it is to be continued. Now, on the subject of these partisans, it seems as though Star Wars comics are using an idea by Gary Whitta that he and Chris Weitz had for a TV show, where partisans, after the events of Rogue One, were trying to hunt down Imperial warlords. Now, the timeline is a bit different. They wanted to do that after Return of the Jedi, so to some extent that idea is also present in Mando Season 4 with what Din Djarin is about to do. But in terms of rebel partisans themselves, until now we kind of knew there were some survivors, but to make them as prominent as this, I mean, yes, they're possessed by the Scourge, and yes, they didn't do too much. The fact they survived and are clearly as violent as Saw Gerrera once was, even resembling his group, is pretty awesome. It changes our perception of Rogue One, because we can look back at that film and say, not all of this ideology was killed off on Jedha. It survived. A really awesome comic issue. I think this is one of the strongest ones in the last kind of 4 or 5 years. Share your thoughts in the comments down below, guys, and if you enjoyed this video, please be sure to give me a big fat thumbs up, subscribe if you're new, and I'll see you in the next video. May the Force be with you, always.